my name is Gabby and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, then welcome to my channel, and today's video is going to be my spoiler-free review for Infinity Alchemist by Kacen Callender. This was a book that I read mostly during the Trans Rights Readathon. I finished it like a day or two after it technically ended, but either way, I will have links to that readathon link down below in the description. It's an amazing place to get book recommendations, learn about different organizations, and it's just like a good time overall. And then also in the description will be a link to the content warnings for this book, and let's go ahead and get into it. Infinity Alchemist follows our main character Ash, who gets rejected from the Lancaster College of Alchemic Science, which means that he cannot legally study alchemy. So he gets a job as the groundskeeper and then keeps practicing alchemy in secret. He ends up getting caught by an apprentice, and instead of having him arrested, she makes a deal with him that she will keep his secret if he helps her find the sacred Book of Source, which gives its reader extraordinary power. I am a pretty big fan of this author, which is why we're here today, and also why I ended up reading this book so quickly, even though this is still kind of a newish release at the time of filming this. And I was really excited to see Kacen Callender get into YA fantasy because I really love the magical realism elements in their other books. So going into this book, I expected the alchemy to be what I loved most about it, and yeah, this book is different than what I expected, but I'm also not disappointed either. Let's go ahead and start talking about the characters, and that means starting with Ash. I liked Ash, but I'm not sure that I got a really good feel for his character until about halfway through the book. Like, I was having a good time before that point, but I was having a really good time after it. When it comes to him, at least. As for Ramsey, I got into her right away. I loved her right away. I thought she was interesting and complex, and also like a good amount of grumpy, snarky, and fun. And while we're here, Ash is also trans. Ramsey uses both he and she pronouns, which I do think this might be the first time that I've seen a book switch back and forth between the pronouns, like throughout the story and in between the chapters. Or at least I haven't seen it too often if I am forgetting somebody right now, which is also possible, but either way, it was very lovely to read. As for our third main character, I liked him more than I thought I would, and I grew to really like him as the story went on, which I do think that this book intended to do, and I think they succeeded in that. As for the villains, there was one that I do wish that we got to see a little bit more of, because even though the book established what kind of character he was going to be, we didn't really see him until the end. And it's one of those things where I don't wish he played a larger role because I don't like him, but when he showed up, it did just kind of fall flat, and it was during a big moment, so I did wish that we got a little bit more in that sense. There was a bigger villain though, with a much larger presence throughout this story, and again, did not like him, but I did like the role that he played throughout the story because I felt like our characters were having to interact, strategize, and race against him and his allies, which I thought helped make for a compelling and an engaging storyline. And then this book also did have some really interesting dynamics between the characters. For example, I really did love the romance. It is polyamorous, and I especially enjoyed where it ended up by the end of the book. And let's go ahead and talk about the world next. It has a lot going on, and when it was first introduced, I don't think my brain fully understood that it had a lot going on. Like, it's a big world with a handful of different houses with different allegiances, and I did find myself mixing them up from time to time, or even just forgetting about them until it would get briefly mentioned again, or a random character from that house would show up. That being said, I do think that this was a world that was very easy to get lost in. It was academia, it was bookish and magical. And speaking of magic, the magic system was interesting. It felt very manifestation based, which I loved the idea of. But the way this book did it, I just felt like it needed more structure, or maybe just some more explanation, because if I thought about the magic system a little bit too much, I started to have questions, so I tried not to do it while I was reading, and it mostly worked. But the more that I thought about it outside of reading the book, and especially now that I'm finished with the book, those questions have just become like much harder to ignore. But there were also magical fantasy moments throughout this story that I did really enjoy, and the story itself, I got really invested in. I was fully into this book and with these characters the entire time. I felt engaged and, like I said earlier, just really lost in it, which was amazing. Especially because I was in a reading slump at the time I was reading this, and this book just made me forget about that. The story also has a huge focus on love, your connections to others, the world, the universe at large, and also to yourself. It reminded me a lot of Lark and Kasim Start a Revolution in that sense, which is also by this author. And it was also a book that I read within a month of reading this one, so it was still very fresh, and there were things in between these two books that did feel very familiar, which I really enjoyed Lark and Kasim, so I'm not complaining. And while I do have some critiques of Infinity Alchemist when I look back on it, none of that really mattered while I was reading it. Like, that was just not where my brain was, and when it did go there, it went away pretty quickly, and I just moved on and fell right back into where I was in the story and what was going on. And then I also really liked how adventurous the story was, but I also did really like when it just settled down into one space. And I do think that that's because of the characters, but I also do think that's because of the author and the writing style and just the structure of the story. I really loved the structure of this story. It's not a perfect book, but it's one that I had a lot of trouble putting down once I got into it, and I got into it immediately. And at the end of the day, what I love about this book greatly outweighs anything that I thought could have been better or handled differently. And if it wasn't for the magic system, I do think that maybe I could have let everything else go and just have given this 5 stars. It was close, but I will be giving Infinity Alchemist by Kacen Callender 4.75 out of 5 stars. Okay, so that is all that I have for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and answer the question that'll be around here if you want to do that, and hopefully I will see you here next time. Bye!